And in our central London studio is Mark Wadsworth, an activist who worked in communities hit by riots in the 80s and 90s across the country. Mark, to you first of all, if I may, your reaction to what happened at the weekend?
Well, it's shocking. It's regrettable that people have lost their homes. I'm very sad about that, and the damage to businesses. But what we have to remember, that this is the, as Martin Luther King described the right, is the voice of the unheard. And there is high unemployment in the Tottenham area, in Brixton, in other parts of London that were hit. In Tottenham, I think it's 50 people chasing every one job, 10% increase in job seeker allowance from last year. There are a lot of people on the streets without jobs, and there's an old saying, isn't there? A hungry man is an angry man.
As I said, John O'Connor is with me here in the studio. I don't know if you can look down the barrel of this camera and speak to our guest who is standing by in central London, Mark Wadsworth. Voice of the unheard, that's why this happened.
Well, Mark, I mean, I hear what you say, but I can't really see that blaming the cut in benefits and blaming the unemployment situation is any excuse for what's happened. And I think that we've always looked for excuses. Before it's been alleged there was institutional racism. Can't be said now, because we look at the makeup of the people that are involved in these demonstrations. They're from all races, so I think the racism thing goes out the window. The fact that we've got disaffected youth, it's across the board. This is a fact of life. We've got young men going to university coming out with degrees who can't get jobs. So I think it's not right to try and find blame and try and find excuses in government policies. That's a cop-out. We've got lots of people out there on the streets who are prepared to commit these offences, have got no conscience whatsoever. They are not part of any community, and that's what makes me laugh when I hear about community leaders speaking on behalf of people. Just because you live somewhere, it doesn't make you part of a community. There's lots of people out there who live very industrious lives, and sometimes in poor conditions. We know that as far as the police are concerned, they've looked at certain areas and called them too sensitive areas, and then they've made them into no-go areas. What does that say about the law-abiding people who live there? We've got to put up with the threats of violence, the street robberies, and all that goes on a daily basis. And I have to say that when I hear the Home Office start bleating on about... When I hear the Home Office start saying crime's going down, tell it to these people in these estates who live under these conditions. There's nothing there for them. They're the real victims of this.
Mr. Wadsworth?
No, I was just saying, what about the harassment of the youth that's still going on, disproportionately racially profiled and stereotyped as criminals? This is not just coming from black voices, this is coming from white voices that's saying that there's still a problem on the streets, John, with the way that ordinary police deal with young black men. You know, it's changed after Macpherson. I was a part of the Stephen Lawrence campaign. I helped Doreen and Neville Lawrence set up the Justice for Stephen campaign, got them introduced to Nelson Mandela. But the situation on the ground, I mean, I experienced it in the early hours of Sunday morning when I used a press card to get through riot police lines. They were surly, they were rude to me, and this is how it's still going on, and this causes flashpoints. I understand that after that peaceful protest outside the police station, a 16-year-old girl was attacked by riot officers or police officers, and that's what sparked this.
But Mark, are you speaking on behalf of the perpetrators of these crimes? I mean, are you their spokesman? Because I don't think anybody speaks on their behalf. They don't want anybody to speak on their behalf. They're a lawless bunch. They're there in every walk of life. We see them at the G20 demonstrations. We see them everywhere. They're opportunist thugs who use these opportunities to bring shame on the area, and I think it's an absolute utter disgrace. It's all very well and very easy to put the police up as the scapegoats in the middle. Oh, it's their fault because they represent law and order. A lot of these people are simmering with hatred all the time, and it only takes the slightest thing to trigger them off and to trigger the violence. I'm sorry, I don't accept this blaming the police at every turn.
That might be a small minority, but that's not the majority. Are you going to say that the students who are protesting over a triple increase in student fees are all thugs? That's not the case.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. The ones I'm calling thugs are the ones who are out there burning and looting. They're the thugs, not the people who try to make something of their lives. There are people out there, as you well know, who are professional criminals, who don't work, will never work, are probably incapable of working. They live on the street, they live through drugs and violence. That's what they do. They're better organised than they used to be. They pose a massive threat to law and order in this country, and they pose a massive threat to the law-abiding, peaceful citizens. It's an absolute...
That's not the vast majority. The reality is, if we want to find a solution, we now need to go forward beyond the condemnations,
but you're condemning the police. But you're the one who started the condemnation.
Like the Home Secretary,
Mark, you're
even
condemning
the local
the
MP,
police.
the leader of the council. What are the solutions? The solutions are engagement. That we need to have a fair social justice, that we need to have a fair slice of the economic cake. Look at the 9 billion that's being spent on the Olympics, and we're told that these bad images around the world are going to spoil that. You know,
but Mark, I haven't heard you when you're talking about a solution. I haven't heard you talk about more appropriate sentences when people are sentenced for these types of crimes. Surely that's part of the solution, isn't it? Isn't part of the solution to take a lot of these people off the streets?
Absolutely. And if we get a fair slice of the pie with the Olympics, I mean, you know, there's going to be a big campaign now.
How can the police start being involved in giving you a fair slice of the pie?
There's going to be a huge campaign now called the Big Rip-Off. And that's what the Olympics are. It looks like it's just going to be a white Olympics.
I'm sorry, Mr.
We want a fair slice of the pie.
We're going off message here, aren't we? We're not really talking about the Olympics just at the moment. We're talking about what's been happening on the streets of London over the last 24, 48 hours. You, to some extent, have been criticising the police. We've heard from Mr. O'Connor saying that that is inappropriate for you to do that. Perhaps you'd like to respond to that.
Of course I criticise people who criminalise young black men like my sons. And I'm very concerned about that. My sons are law-abiding. I've always taught them to respect authority and to respect the police.
With all due respect, you know, if someone's walking down the street struggling to carry a plasma TV away from an electronics store, they're probably not good guys, are they?
I don't support that. And I said that at the very beginning. It's regrettable, and it fills my heart with sadness, along with the vast majority of people in those communities affected.
Which is a reasonable point, isn't it, Mr. O'Connor?
Well, you know, I'm fed up to the back teeth of every time there's an incident like this, every time there's public disorder, I'm fed up to the back teeth of it being blamed somehow on the police. The police did stop and search. The police are not, I mean, as Mark was saying, the police are not polite enough. I mean, my goodness me, they're there dealing with a riot situation and they're not polite. I mean, what does he expect? I mean, does he expect a totally emasculated police force? And after all, it is a police force, and it is there to protect people. It's there to protect lives and property. And they were singly unable to do that on Saturday night, simply because the actions of a number of rioters, by setting fire to buildings, prevented them from getting to those buildings. We could have had murders going on there. We could have had people killed in those burning buildings.
But what do you say to Trident, that special operation against gun crime and drugs in the black community is supposed to be there to protect black people, not kill them? And that's what's happened with Mark Duggan. He's ended up dead. Shot dead
Mark,
by police.
I don't think you can talk about that case in any event, because nobody knows, apart from the investigators, the people that were there, and the Independent Police Complaints Commission. And you know as well as I do that talking about that and bringing that up is not going to be at all helpful. You have to wait until the due process of law is undergone. You have to wait until there's been a proper professional investigation. Trying to preempt it and trying to throw criticism at anybody at this stage, it's just not professional.
There are ways of managing the situation, the public relations campaign, and time again Scotland Yard gets it wrong by trying to paint the victim, demonise the victim in a bad light. That happened with Roger Sylvester, saying he was a crackhead. The police had to apologise about that. Cynthia Jarrett, Joy Gardner, and now Mark Duggan. And this just can't continue.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see, won't we, as far as Mr. Duggan is concerned. There is an investigation going on at the moment, and generally it does seem that we do eventually get to the truth, even as far as on Charles de Menezes. Of course, we heard what the claims were at the time. Subsequently, there was an inquiry, and the truth will out. So we'll have to wait and see what happens as far as Mr. Duggan is concerned. His family was certainly making a peaceful protest on Saturday night, and then it was hijacked by people who had nothing but violence and criminality in mind.
What is your point? You are addressing that to me or to the
I most certainly am.
commander?
I'm asking you to respond to that, sir.
Well, I think it's very wrong that families are typecast and put in this appalling situation where they have to go out there and talk about unrest and riots and all the rest of it, when what they're really seeking is justice.
I don't think the family were talking about unrest, though, were they? So just to clarify
well, they were
that.
forced by the media to give a view one way or the other, what they thought of it, when the issue here is justice, and their son being called a gangster by papers like the Daily Mail and the Sun. As part of the police agenda, part of that old-fashioned collusion that goes on between media and police. And that really doesn't help. It's just a red rag to a bull.
Mr. Wadsworth, come on, we're not talking about that. What we're talking about, sir, if you would, is what happened as a result. A young man was killed on Thursday. We will find out how and in what manner, and if someone was involved in criminality, they will subsequently be punished for that. We're not talking about that. It's a tragedy for the family and for the man involved. As far as the riots that became basically took over parts of central London and the suburbs of London over the last 48 hours, that cannot be acceptable, surely.
Well, I've answered that already. So
well, if you could just clarify it for me again, sir.
No, I just said that it's very sad and regrettable. I'm not going to repeat what I just said. But some youth on the street would say that what happened was a casualty of war, a war against injustice, poverty, against racism that's continuous. And we need an engagement that addresses that sensibly, rather than just the old slogans, law and order, right-wing slogans against
This is the typical rhetoric that happens every time there's an incident involving a black person. It doesn't come down to racism. These incidents occur. There are white people that get killed at the hands of police. There are people who go out of their way to provoke police into a shooting situation. For example, the name of shooting suicide by cop, is a known phenomenon. I mean, this happens. It's going to happen because the police are at the front line in dealing with some of the most major incidents that ever occur. Now, of course, sometimes other people are going to get the wrong end of the stick. Sometimes the police are going to get the wrong end of the stick. But to try and paint the police as going out with an inbred racist agenda is totally wrong. I want to hear Mark Duggan condemn the rioters, condemn the people who set fire to people's houses, condemn those who went out with the sole intention of causing mayhem over the last few days. If he doesn't do that, then I would say that he's not doing his job.
Do you feel that you could do that, Mr. Wadsworth?
He's unfortunately dead, so he can't condemn anything.
That was a slip of the tongue and completely unnecessary to pick that up. We're very aware of what Mr. O'Connor meant. Mr. Wadsworth, would you like to answer the question? The
police have a licence to kill when it comes to black people. I was about to make a TV programme about it, but it was blocked. These grievances, these concerns have got to be properly addressed in an adult way. Stop the knee-jerk of the condemnations, that are straight out of the script book of politics.
Well, I suspect we're going to be at opposite ends of the spectrum forever, because I would say stop the criminals, stop the rioting, stop the arsonists, because before long someone's going to get killed. And that's the priority of the police, is to stop what's going on. Not just to talk about it, to talk to community leaders. They've got to do more. And if that means, when it comes to more rapid containment and more rapid controlling of what goes on, that might mean having more equipment. It might mean using plastic bullets, it might mean using water cannon. There's a whole raft of things the police are now going to have to consider, because a repeat of what happened on Saturday is just not acceptable.
OK, final word from you, Mr. Wadsworth.
Police manual. Policing can only succeed by consent. And where consent breaks down, then there has to be dialogue. So we need less war, and we need jaw now, talking with the young dispossessed, talking with the people who don't feel engaged with civil society, and sharing out social justice and economic and political justice.
OK, gentlemen, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time. Thank you both very much indeed for your input this afternoon here on Sky News. News at Sky.